Well, hello, B-siders. Welcome to another guest interview for my Living on a B-side podcast. It's very exciting to actually have other humans to talk to, and it doesn't feel like I'm just rambling to myself, which I know a lot of introverts probably do talk to themselves, but it's nice to actually have someone else to sort of share, our love of music with and for. So guest interview. Yay, super excited. And on today's episode, I am joined by the wonderful Kim. Hello, Kim. Thank you for joining me today.
Hello, Birgit. It's lovely to be here. I know we've been trying to get this sorted for a while.
I know it's the joys of time zones and logistics and work and everything else, but we've made it, and that's the main thing. Now, Kim, I'm just going to introduce you quickly, and please add on anything afterwards that you feel is important that I might have not shared with the viewers and listeners. And then we'll go straight into all of our love of music. So is that okay?
Perfect.
Cool. So Kim, you are a lecturer in American Studies and Basic Spanish, which I find... Sorry, say that again?
Oh, sorry, Latin American.
Latin American. I'm sorry about that.
That's fine.
Yes, there you go. And you also said you are a cultural advocate by passion. So you might have to dive into that a little bit more once the introduction's done, because I know that's where the music kind of connects, I think, as well. And I know you said that your mission is to empower the culturally inquisitive beginner Spanish language learner. Good God, that's a tongue twister.
Yes, I should probably have to edit that at some point.
But it's what you're passionate about. So, and I'm super excited to say that you're actually in Trinidad and Tobago. I say, is it Tobago or Tobago? It's probably tomatoes, I suppose, isn't it?
Well, it depends. I'm from the big island, but the people who live on the smaller island of Tobago probably would say, no, get it right. It's Tobago.
Yes, it's Tobago. Okay, so we want to get it right. Absolutely. And you live there with your husband and 3 sons. And I love the fact that you said that you're actually teaching your kids Spanish with music, and they have no idea that you're doing it.
They don't. Yeah.
So that's really in a nutshell. So maybe can you expand a little bit on how, sure, what you do and how you came up with this idea of using music to teach people Spanish?
Right. So I am, my day job is I am a lecturer in Latin American history, politics, and basic Spanish. So I've always been interested in Spanish and Latin American culture, and I think that happened since I was 11 years old in school. I started learning Spanish, and as I did more and more of it, I realized it wasn't just a language I was learning, but this was also a kind of a pathway into discovering a much bigger community, a much wider culture, and people that I had never had much exposure to before. And then around that time as well in Trinidad, well, at least my sheltered 11-year-old self, as I got older and started seeing more of people outside of my family, began to realize just how many people from Venezuela lived here, from Cuba, from the Dominican Republic. And so that really married well into my interest in the language and now being able to connect with people from Spanish-speaking countries. And then when it was time to go to university, I decided, yep, I wanted to stick with it, but I didn't necessarily want to do a full-on language degree. So that's where I started looking at my college had started this Latin American Studies program. So I was actually in the first group that the college ran for it. And it stuck. It really, really stuck. I actually moved to England for a few years. I worked and did a master's there in Latin American development. And then I worked in finance, of all things, for a few years. Yeah.
Feels like many of us do. Why?
And then I was fortunate enough to be there was a job opening in a local college in Trinidad, and they were looking for someone to teach Latin American studies. So I signed up, and well, the rest is, 10 years of history. So, but what has also been happening in Trinidad over the last few years is that we have seen an influx of Venezuelan migrants. So even more so than we had before, because of the political situation in Venezuela, and we are actually only 8 miles away from the Venezuelan coast. So,
Hmm.
in terms of legal and illegal immigration, we've had a huge surge in the country. So, instead, what used to be a nice mixing of cultures started becoming more of a culture clash. And it parallels what happens in the United States with migrants from Central America. So I wanted to do something about that. Or, I remember we had this discussion as well about, our favorite songs, and I told you one of mine was Heal the World, but we'll get to that afterwards. But, I
Yeah.
wanted to do something. I'm like, no, I have studied this language for so long. I have been teaching this for so long. I understand why people are coming. I understand why cultures are clashing. I need to do something to help this situation as well. So that's when I had the idea to start my blog over the Andes, because it wasn't just meant to help in Trinidad, but even for people in other countries where they were also dealing with this culture clash, and that's where Over the Andes came out. So it's a blog that's dedicated to all things Latin American and Caribbean culture, food, dress, music, books, history, pretty much anything goes. But it one of my aims as well is to kind of break down stereotypes. So
Hmm.
that's where the incentive for the blog came, and I also started creating materials for beginner Spanish learners, but that were also very culturally sensitive and focused on topics that would teach people about these countries that spoke Spanish.
Hmm.
So that's when I say that I'm a language coach and culture advocate. That's where it all gets married together.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. And I can just tell when you talk about it, you're really, really passionate. You really care. You really do care. So it really comes across. And I think it's amazing because, yeah, it's happening not just obviously with anything that's got to do with Spanish, but I think it happens all over the world at the moment. This whole clash, instead of, trying to at least get to know each other. If you can't embrace each other, at least get to know each other. It's a lot
Exactly.
of banging heads against brick walls. It feels, there's this wall up. So
It is,
I
yeah. And
love, I love what you do.
thank you.
Definitely continue with it.
I
Now,
will.
now, how did you come up with this idea of integrating music more in your teachings, not just the language, but obviously also your cultural, getting to know the culture kind of angle?
Right.
How did that come about?
So, I mean, if you think of Latin America, I'm sure right off the bat you can think of lots of different musical genres. Exactly, right? So,
Yes. Yes, a lot of dancing, sexy dancing, good vibes. The tunes always seem very happy and loving life. That's my
you.
interpretation anyway.
No, no, no. I know exactly what you mean. And actually, that is one of my memories from school. I remember learning Spanish in high school, and that was around the time where I think I was in sixth form when we had Ricky Martin, and he did his Un Dos Tres, the World Cup song,
Yep.
and yeah. And I mean, Ricky Martin is pretty easy on the eyes, especially to a bunch of 16 and 17-year-old girls. So yeah, totally love that then. And
Yeah.
right before him, a few years before that, Selena, Quintanilla. So Selena, she was a Chicana artist. So although she was Mexican American, and actually she grew up in the U.S. But her music, she really took off in her music when she started releasing her songs in Spanish, and her songs made it onto mainstream Billboard charts. And for us as Spanish students at that time, it was like, wow, we can turn on the radio and hear songs in Spanish in Trinidad, you know, and we didn't have to go out and buy. Yes, we still went and bought the CDs because,
As you do.
but yeah. So I remember being super excited at that point. I remember we would in Spanish class, and we'll be copying down lyrics from the song so that we could try to sing it, and it was really a lovely way to see what we were learning in class translated into music, and to realize that what we were
Mhm.
doing didn't exist in a classroom bubble. This was a skill that we could use to kind of enjoy life, you
Mhm.
know um, so that was my experience with music as a student. But then also, right after I finished my first degree, I worked as an ESL teacher for a few months. And I noticed that two of my best students, they said they listened to a lot of music in English. So, and one in particular, I remember I was actually the writing teacher. And so we would have, they'd have paragraphs to write, and every time she wrote something, it was almost like reading poetry. And that was because, yeah, her exposure to English had been so focused on music that even how she
Mhm.
expressed herself in English reflected that impact that music had on her.
Wow.
So yeah, so from very early in my teaching career, although I wouldn't become a full-time teacher for many more years, I was able to tie the importance of music into language learning, so that I knew it was something I was definitely going to use.
Oh, this is
Because
so
I know you
awesome.
have a lovely story about learning English using music too. So
I was basically like that student of yours. That's what
yeah,
I did. Because at that time, TV wasn't something we've had a lot of. It was more like a hi-fi or a stereo at home, and sometimes I just sat there at my desk, and the little booklets from the CDs. I don't think some people might not know what that is in this day and age, but in the old days, you got a little kind of booklet with your CDs, which had all the lyrics in it, and that's what I did. I just got my dictionary out and I started translating my favorite songs from
yeah.
English to German, so I would understand what they're singing about while actually listening to the song,
Yeah.
and that's how I learn English. On top
And I'm
of
sure,
obviously the school stuff you got.
yeah. And that was far more interesting than the school cassettes that were just full of boring, you
We
know.
didn't even have school cassettes. We didn't have that. We literally just had the classroom with the
Yeah,
teacher and the books, and that was it. So we
they
had to
used to
find,
tell us. Oh gosh, yeah.
yeah. So that was, but yeah, it was so much fun. It was so
Hmm.
much fun. Yeah,
Music, it brings the language alive in a different kind of way. It speaks to a different type of sense, and it lets you kind of internalize the language in a way that you can't do just from listening to dialogue or from reading. So
yeah. I think even though it's all happening in your brain, but it also
yeah,
speaks to the heart, you
it
know.
does exactly,
And
exactly.
that's where then your interest and your passion to learn more comes from. So
Precisely. So like
yeah.
there are times when because I teach basic Spanish, I don't get much practice at the higher levels. And there
Mm-hmm.
have been times in my life where I really haven't been using my Spanish. But music, I can always, if I want to just kind of get back a sense of that practice, I just have to play something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to be actively trying to translate the lyrics, because most times they don't really translate very well anyway. So,
No,
exactly.
it's not actually. Yeah, it's not. Sometimes the grammar is a little bit to desired for, but
And the
for a
metaphors
beginner,
are like,
it's
oh,
okay, I suppose.
exactly.
Oh
Yeah, it's
dear.
there, and there's no pressure, because I always think, even in your native language, like, so for English, I can listen to some songs and be like, I'm not quite sure what they're singing about, or I didn't quite catch that line. So I don't have that pressure on myself in Spanish now, because I know sometimes in English I don't get it, so I don't expect, because I'm listening to it in Spanish and I speak Spanish, that I'm supposed to understand every word. So I'm much more forgiving of myself when I'm listening to music for not, getting it right away.
Very good point. I love that. I love that you brought that up. Yeah. Yeah, it can teach us a lot by learning a language, not just about the language itself, but about, being a bit more kinder to ourselves and not having so
Yeah,
much, our expectations don't have to be as high. It's still
exactly.
okay. Mm.
That's a whole other topic, and that's one I feel very passionate about as well, because I went through some tough times with Spanish.
Oh my God. We could
So,
probably talk for hours, I suppose.
like, always have to remember, be kind to yourself in your language journey. And yeah, and maybe I also think, having gone through that, it's why,
Hmm.
I'm also a very, I would say, I don't give easy A's, but I am a sympathetic Spanish teacher, because I know how hard, how easy it is to aim for perfection, and because you don't achieve it, to kind of feel like you're not good enough in the language. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, yeah. But
Yeah.
music, you can get away from that for a bit.
Yeah, it takes that pressure off. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I can relate to that in the sense that, when I obviously learned English, and I remember this one incident very well where I did my apprenticeship, and the English teacher at that point, me and my friend, we were aiming to do, was it the Cambridge Certificate of English? But you had to make a test for that to be able to go into a different class. And
Right.
our teacher at that time was like, "What are you bothering? You're never going to get in." And we actually did.
Oh,
And we sort of then basically went, "No, no, 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 no," like,
yeah.
and we
No, what?
literally both passed that exam. We walked away with the certificate. But
Yes,
because we were passionate about it, we didn't.
exactly,
And it was
exactly,
tough at times because you had to learn, like, oh, it was really intense, but we loved it. So that's when you
exactly.
say you don't need an A to be good at something.
No, I mean, it's
Yeah.
nice to have a piece of paper that says the A, but
Mm,
that's not the important thing, you
no.
know. And yeah, that's what I mean, I don't tell my students this, because I don't want them to think, well, it's not important, because they are part of a college program and they do need to get certain grades. But
Of course.
for me personally, I don't watch the A's as a measure of success. I look at what they learn during the course, and what for me as a teacher feels like success is when I ask them at the end of the course, how do you feel about Spanish now? And I love to hear words like accomplished. I love to hear things like confident. When I say, do you want to continue with Spanish? And they say, yes, I feel like I can now. That's what I want to hear. And it's building that passion. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
really sorry you had a teacher who told you you couldn't, you know.
Oh,
Yeah, that's kind of like what happened with me in Spanish at university. I had
mm-hmm.
a high school teacher that told us we could do anything, and I believed that, and I loved the language, and I really excelled. University was a whole different story.
Yeah, well, we won't go into that today. Better not. We'll keep it on a nice and positive note, I think.
Exactly.
So let's talk a bit about how do you actually integrate music into your teaching? How does that work? Obviously, you're not going to tell them to do homework to a certain song, or is that how you do it, or how does it work?
You can. So different things. Because of how I teach on a more curriculum based system, I have a little, and it's something that's taught across the college. I have a little less flexibility with types of assignments that are graded. But what I do try to do with those students is I always try to find a few songs that match themes, so
Mm.
I can kind of share that mini playlist with them and say, right, you know, listen to these. You don't have to learn the songs by heart, but keep playing them. Um, One activity that I do is something called a close. It's called a close activity, CLOZE. So it's like where students will listen to a song, and they have a worksheet with the lyrics very often, and sometimes they have to fill in the blanks. So, and then, so if I'm doing this for any of the resources that I create, then I can do it from all different levels. Or if I'm doing it with someone who I might tutor privately, so I can do lots of different things with it. So for really novice learners, you might do things like have the song, make sure they're really familiar with it, you have a word bank, or you give them two choices of words to fill in the blank, so that
Mm.
it's not too scary, and it's not like a they have to listen and listen and listen and pull out a word from the air to fill in the blank, you know. But as
Mm.
you get more advanced and more comfortable with the vocabulary, then yeah, we can do that.
Mhm.
Just give you a song and we take out some words and we say, all right, listen, you know. Yeah. Or we might have some that's a really simple activity. And if the students are prepped properly for it, it's one that they can have a lot of fun with as well.
Mhm.
uh, for children, it's really, I mean, YouTube is brilliant with finding that. So if I'm doing children's activities, or well, with my own kids, like especially my 5-year-old, you know, he learned all of his colors from songs, and he learned all of the greetings in Spanish from songs. And what else did we do in Spanish? And he did all his fruits. He learned all his fruits from songs as well.
Oh,
And
nice.
but then it that's nice to kind of capture that, like, well, he's 5, so it's good to catch his attention, and then you have to reinforce it. So you can kind of use music to catch their attention, and then you reinforce it through regular use or practice, or you know. So like now when it's time for fruits, and like, well, which fruit do you want, and they have to call it in Spanish, or you know. And so it, yeah, it's
Wow. And
those are
that's
some
yeah.
tips.
Yeah, but that sounds like a bit more fun than just having, here's your book, here's your exercise, like, you know, here's your book with teaching stuff in it, and here's your exercise book, and just get on with it. You know,
Yeah,
it's at least you can. I suppose it encourages to use more of your senses,
it
not
does.
just reading, but also listening. So you probably learning it on a deeper
Mm-hmm.
level. So that's
Mm-hmm.
really cool. I wish I wish more schools would do that. I
Yeah.
think.
There is a lovely, you know, move now, I think, in language teaching to do something called comprehensible input.
Hmm.
It involves a lot more activities centered around what the students can do. So as opposed to like setting exercises at levels that are a bit reaching for them, you kind of create an environment where the exercises are using vocabulary that they are familiar with, and then introducing new vocabulary, but always being mindful of where they actually are at, and then
Mm.
using different, yeah,
Right.
different types of, like, you know, some really fun, I keep using the word activities, but they really are, you know, it's like making up stories, it's watching movies or like short video clips, but repeating certain phrases to understand what's happening in the video clips. It's There are
Mm.
lots of very exciting teaching methodologies that
Yeah.
I'm hoping to use more of in my classes, but it's a long way because it means readdressing assessing as well. And assessments seem to be like, yeah.
Yeah. And the whole school system, I guess, across the globe is still in a probably in a phase of change, I
Yeah,
think. So
exactly.
yeah. But I'm glad you're kind of leading the way with trying different approaches and integrating a bit more music, and, you know, using that to initiate change too, I think.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. And how does that fit in with because you talked about that you're passionate about the culture and everything that comes with that, and that you want to build like a bridge for understanding, so that, you know, there's not so much conflict but more sitting together at a table and trying to find a solution and a compromise. How do you use music in that sense? Like, do you think it's, yeah, just
Mhm.
what comes to mind
It
when you
still
think
is
about that?
more personal, in the sense that it then comes down to what you like or don't like. Um, so I know Birgit and I know we know each other um, through a woman, an introvert woman in business group. So you know, from that whole being an introverted person and then being shy is a whole different story too. But you know, if you're on that spectrum, small talk doesn't really come easy, you know, in your
Nope.
native language, so far less in your foreign language. And that is what I found was really, really taxing me. Like I'd go out and my husband would be like, "Oh, you speak Spanish. My wife is a Spanish teacher." I'd be like a deer in headlights. Like, I don't know what to say. I feel like I have to start performing, and I don't know what to do.
Oh no.
I mean, there, yeah, and I would totally clam up, and it wasn't that I can't speak, but I just, as I said, small talk is difficult for me even in English. So far less now when I feel extra pressure and I feel like I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
be judged for not being able to speak. So what I kind of started doing was looking at situations where I was able to speak more comfortably and where I didn't care about how I sounded and if I was perfect or not.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized it was when I was really connecting with someone. And the thing is, with music, very often, um, I mean, okay, if you look at the US Billboard charts, you can always find, even if somebody's speaking English or Spanish, you know, they know who certain singers are. But then they know singers like Jennifer Lopez, and they know Mark Anthony, and they know well, Ricky Martin, you know, and so then that's always an easy conversation. For me personally, as I said, that's why I said it kind of comes down to your personal, um, which areas kind of light you up. Now,
Mm-hmm.
for me, I could use music, I could use football, well, soccer for our North American friends, or I
Yep.
don't know in Australia what you use, yeah. So,
Yeah, well, we've got soccer and then there's footy, which is AFL. So it's, yes. And then you got rugby as well. So, yeah.
well, right.
Yeah.
So if it's like about music, football, or soccer, then you have uh, if I know someone's from a particular country, and then I could ask which part they're from, because I could say I know certain places, and then they could describe for me where they are from. What else? I've kind of had to develop over the years a few kind of go-to points where I could kind of connect with people immediately, and kind of pull myself away from that fear of the random small talk.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that for me is where, for me personally, using music to kind of connect with somebody immediately, that's a tool that I use. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Yeah.
it's, yeah.
Yeah. Because it's, yeah. Who doesn't know Jennifer Lopez or, and Ricky Martin and things like that? Yeah. Yeah. And then I think, then maybe your
Oh,
curiosity takes over and you say, well, if you're from Spain, what kind of Spanish singers or bands do you have that I might know?
exactly. Oh, Enrique. I can't believe I let a conversation go and I didn't mention Enrique Iglesias.
Oh my God, how dare we? I didn't click either. Oh God,
Oh,
yeah.
that is my yeah. I always tell my husband it was either him or Enrique.
Oh my God, your poor husband.
My husband also thinks he looks like Enrique.
Oh, he does. Okay, okay, I'll take everything back.
I said my husband thinks he looks like Enrique.
Okay, okay.
I just say, okay, all right. So,
Oh well,
oh well.
that's okay.
I'll go along
Yeah.
with that.
So you
So,
think that we could probably dig into and music as one of the tools to get to know one another on a better level, and through that maybe then get curious about their culture and how they live and how they tick. That would be
yes.
such a good starting point to use.
It is, because what it does, it kind of breaks down that initial ice, the whole icebreaker conversation. But
Mm,
again, I think for many introverts as well, icebreakers are like, oh gosh. But you kind of, if you create an icebreaker that's more natural to you,
yeah.
and once you've kind of gotten past that first few sentences, then you can have a conversation that's more, whatever topic feels like that you want to have with that
Mm-hmm.
person, however you connect with that person. And then, yes, as you get to know them more and more, you go on to even bigger topics and deeper
Yeah.
topics, and the challenging ones, maybe, that you
Yeah.
may not know how to do, in your first 5 minutes of meeting someone new. But yeah.
I don't know why this came into my head, but when we sort of talked about icebreakers, and I might be totally wrong here, but I remember, oh God, watching Fast and Furious movies, and it seems to me that in those kind of movies, there's always this kind of Spanish Latin American vibe with the music coming from it.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's
I know what you mean. I know what you mean from the couple that I remember watching.
hmm.
Yeah,
So that's a cool icebreaker for blokes
and
if they're into
I think that
cars.
that speaks to the impact that Latin music has had on. I don't like to use the word mainstream music because there's a kind of a sense that, so why must American music be the mainstream music? You know, there's music all over the world. So
Yes,
you know, but
exactly.
yeah, but the
Yeah,
Latin influence on, let's say, American music, and then because of the role music plays in movies, you get that spin off on it as well. And then of course some of these movies are based on in certain locations in the US where you might have a heavier Latin American population. So again, it comes in through that. But
yeah.
I know exactly what you mean about, yeah, type in certain types of movies. There's always, especially some of the more action packed ones, very often they tend to bring in that, I guess, just the beat. You know, the beat lends itself to that kind of
Mm.
excitement, suspense. You know,
Yeah, yeah. Or it's also probably, and I don't know if that's a cultural thing, but you sort of hear the music and then all of a sudden you see like the party happening and the girls
yes.
dancing, and you sort of get this is what it's like living in a Latin American country. They just have parties all the time and music and a good time, that's sort of what you kind of in a way are shown, which is probably a little bit far from reality, but you know.
Probably, yeah. But and it's the same thing. I think even with like music from like my parts of the Caribbean, you know, where it's like you hear steel pan, and it's like a big party on the beach. I'm like, well, that happens sometimes, but yeah, not every day.
But I guess that's part of why music is so important. It can just take you away for 5 minutes and give you that sense of things can be like this, or they can be better, or you know, it's like, I wouldn't say an escape,
Exactly.
but sometimes it is, and that's fine. We need that
Sometimes it
sometimes,
is.
you know. Sometimes we definitely need a little bit of an
Definitely.
escape, and if it's only for a few minutes. And obviously,
Take
you
it.
guys
Take
over
it.
on that side of the world are doing it well. Latin American, Caribbean, all that kind of thing. It's always such good feel good music. Happy, and
It is. It is.
so
Yep.
now I've asked you a couple of questions in my questionnaire, and I want to sort of move on to those. And the first
Sure.
one I would love to talk about is your favorite song. And I know not to be
So,
confused with the one that sort of describes, which we come to later.
oh, right. Okay.
Didn't you really tell you? Do
Trying
you
to remember.
remember?
Actually, my favorite song depends on my mood. So I'm trying to remember which mood I was in when I filled out the questionnaire.
All right. Well,
Um,
you said it was Frankie by Sister Sledge.
right, all right. My original favorite song. Yes. The first song I can remember being my favorite song was definitely Frankie, Sister Sledge. Yes, and so I remember telling you that part of that was because it was the first time I remember like my parents actually paying attention to my musical preferences. Not that I have any big memory of having musical preferences, but I distinctly remember being in a car one day. I think we were coming back from the beach or something, and the song came on, and my dad told my mom to raise the volume up because, and he kind of peeped in the back to see me. He's like, well, she likes it. You know, and then they kind of just kept looking at me while I was there listening to the song, and I was like, "Oh yes, I do like this song." So, but
So,
it was one of the first times, yeah, that people
yeah,
actually cared about what from a music perspective.
yeah, and I think that's good for a kid if you feel that sense of acknowledgement and importance that your parents do say. It's important that we acknowledge you love this music and we listen to it because you love it. It makes
Mm,
you feel valued, I suppose.
exactly, it did. Yeah,
Yeah.
it did.
Oh, I love that song too. It's such a fun song,
It is.
isn't
I
it?
still love
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't tap along when that song comes on? I know I do.
it.
Oh, that's gorgeous. Okay, and I know we've been chatting for quite some time. Time flies when you're having fun, isn't it? And I think we could go on for like at least another half an hour. But I think we've covered some really good points, and it even got me thinking a lot. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Like a new angle on how to use music in life, and how important it is actually in our social society and setup, that we seem to forget sometimes.
Yeah.
So keep doing what you do because it's important.
You.
And the last question I always ask any of my guests, is if they would have to describe their life and or business by using just one song, which song would that be, and then also why?
Oh, this question. So, so I had written "Heal the World" by Michael Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it's so hard to put into words sometimes when you just feel something, But that message about make this world a better place, and talking about seeing one another and understanding one another and working with one another, because that's really the only way that we can kind of bridge all of these rifts that we have created over all of these, oh gosh, centuries, and for me that is what heal the world represents, and that is a main driving factor behind why I started this business, this Over the Andes business, which is all about building up cultural awareness and building up cultural empathy. So, oh gosh, it's going to sound so cheesy, but I really believe it. So I remember when I was going through this whole process of why am I doing this? Why can't I find something easier to do? And I had to think and think and think, like, and because no matter what, I always kept coming back to this idea of cultural empathy and using what I knew about Latin America to build bridges. And it came back to honestly, truly believing that cultural empathy will heal the world. And that if we all had more cultural empathy and more understanding of where one another is coming from, we don't have to agree. We really don't. We're too different. We don't have to agree. But if we could just kind of see beyond how we feel about something and understand why somebody feels a different way, then that alone would go a long way into healing all of these rifts and all of this pain and all of this suffering and all of this division. So yes, that's why "Heal the World" is my go-to song, and a song that I think describes what I do and why I do it. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. I felt that. I did.
Oh,
I was
gosh.
like, oh, yeah.
It's hard to put into words sometimes because it's just,
And
yeah.
that's why music is beautiful, because sometimes music can express what words cannot. I think there's a quote on that actually somewhere. And that's why we need artists in any shape or form to
Precisely.
express what sometimes we can't. And yeah, I love that song. It's yes, something we should all remember, that we can only heal ourselves and each other, through understanding, curiosity and empathy, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I like that curiosity. And then,
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. I'm so glad you came on. I really love this conversation. It's such food for thought for my brain too. Like, giving me such different angles on so many things.
notes.
I've got the recording. So yes, thank you so much for coming on. I'll put
You're
all your
welcome.
social media links and your website and everything, obviously, in the description of this episode, so that people can connect with you. I would definitely recommend to connect with you, because you obviously have so much more to say on that topic, and this time we've had together obviously wasn't long enough. So please check out Kim wherever she's on social media. Connect with her on a mailing list if that's what you want to do.
Lots of options.
Yes, exactly. And if you have any questions for her, then connect through there as well. She'll probably be more than happy to answer them, aren't you, Kim?
Yes. I
Okay.
like one.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here, Kim.
Yeah.
And for everybody who's watching and listening, thanks for tuning in. I'm so glad you've joined again for another episode of this podcast, where music takes the center stage in everything we do, feel, and say. And until next time, B-siders, take care of each other, keep dancing and keep rocking, and maybe throw in a bit of Latin music now and then as well. And I shall see and talk to you in the next episode. Take care, everyone. Bye.